Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining me on the Hizmet talk. We'll be talking about women and Hizmet movement. So I'll just share the broadcast on my channel so more people can see that. And if you can do the same, I would appreciate that. And then we'll start in a moment's time. Thank you very much for joining again. So, as you would guess, we are going to talk about the Women's Day related topic today. There is a bit and I'm just trying to make sure that every like my broadcast is okay. And it looks like it's okay. So we'll be talking about Hizmet movement and the women. I'll just make a very short topic. As you know, Gulen made a statement last year, a video statement on 8th of March last year, and in Center for Hizmet Studies we have actually looked into that message. We find it very important, and we have shared some of our thoughts at that time about the report. So today I will remind you about that report, and then we'll try to take it from there and see what happened since then. So the report was saying some of the, like if you haven't watched it, you can find it on YouTube, or you can find it on our website on Hizmet Studies org as well. Both the report, the summary of it, and our response to the report last year. So please do check that. It was, I think, a very important message coming from Gulen, reiterating the same issues since probably 1990s about the women's rights and everything. So for those of you who haven't seen the messages, I'll just summarize the key messages from there and show it on your screen as well, and so we can start talking about that. First of all, the first part was it was saying women should be able to take any role and work in any desired profession and take part in every aspect of the society. And he gave some examples like Hazreti Aisha and her role in society, being a military commander even at a time. So that was an important part of the message. And another message in there was about, from the Islamic faith perspective, there is no obstacle preventing women from participating in any aspect of social life. She can assume any role she wishes, including the roles of president and chief of general staff. So this was, like another bullet point from the message. And the third bullet point was, you can see on the screen as well, a global effort needs to be exerted promoting women's rights, in particular through the lenses of faith traditions. Worldwide conferences and interfaith symposiums can be the catalyst to raising awareness and change. And finally, he also, one of the key messages was promotion of equal rights and women's rights needs to be embedded as mindset and internalized from very early age. Thus, desired attitudes on women's rights can only be achieved through the education and through its integration into school curricula from as early as nursery education through to secondary education. So Gulen suggesting that we have to change our mindsets about women and women's role. For that reason, we should consider changing the curriculums starting at nursery age, that like the roles that women take, traditional roles that women take, are not different than shouldn't be different than the roles that men takes. And I think these messages were very good, and I'll just share the last one, which he says it's essential that women receive an education that puts her on par with her male counterparts and family members. Rumi has a beautiful saying: not the one speaking the same language, but the one sharing the same feeling understands each other, says Gulen. So these are all like very nice, very positive, very ahead of its time messages. And many people would, I know, perceive this as like a PR campaign for Gulen's point of view, where he's trying to get attention from the world to promote how forward-thinking he is. But because I do work on Gulen and his philosophy as a PhD topic, I can assure you that is a consistent theme on Gulen. So, for instance, this message was there at least we know since 1995. He was talking about that women should be able to take the same role as men, and he was talking about the changing mindsets. He was talking and giving the same examples of Hazreti Aisha being the commander in the time of the Prophet. So what happened is, of course, after the time of the Prophet, we see that women were pushed back to the traditional role of being mothers or secondary citizens. Even the marriage contract that was designed by Islam as equal for both man and woman, even in terms of divorce and everything, was actually, let's say, disregarded. Many people at the moment think that the nikah only gives men the right to divorce, for instance. The woman doesn't have that right. That's only one nikah that was traditionally a nikah agreement that was traditionally used when a rich man married to a slave or a second-class citizen. It was never the case when it was, like when free people married to each other, they have both equal rights under the Islamic legislation. But somehow our patriarchal mindset brought, like disregard that equal marriage and, consider all women as, again, slaves and second-class citizens. So the default nikah has been promoted as where man has rights, full rights, including divorce and everything, while woman doesn't have the same rights, and so on and so forth. So to change that mindset, not only about the nikah, but traditional roles, trying to give women the right, like role of, let's say, a judge, a prosecutor, a leader, a governor, all these issues have been, disregarded for a very long time. So Gulen is talking about bringing that original Islamic ethos where man and woman are equal. Actually, if you look at the movie, The Message, and you will see when Mecca people were persecuting Muslims who run away to Ethiopia in that time, and they wanted those Muslims to be given back to them. One of the arguments was about the role of women, and Muslims at that time were very adamant that the role of women or the value of women are equal. They might be different in terms of physics and in terms of creation, but they are equal in terms of value, and that was one of the discussion even then. But somehow this is all changed, the mindset, and this is same for all the world cultures. Probably it's heavily patriarchal. So what I was trying to say is, at the time when we read this message, our response was, this is a very, very key message, and it's a good time for Hizmet Movement to follow this message thorough. And what we have seen so far, what I have seen, at least what I have observed so far, is that in terms of responding this message or implementing this message, in the whole year there hasn't been any significant activity or effort to put this into practice. Like, for instance, none of the curriculum was revised because Gulen said so in any of the schools that I know. But then again, I have to be honest, I haven't really looked into that, as an empirical study, but we haven't received any signal or message that this has changed something in any of the schools around the world, or any nurseries, any elementary schools, that once the movement members heard this message, you would expect from a, like as Gulen movement is defined, a very central organization, you would expect the schools to implement this. But, like, quite contrary, it didn't really change a lot. So this is one of the reasons why I think Gulen movement is not a traditional Islamic movement that, whenever Gulen says something, it happens. There are many issues that the movement has resisted what Gulen said, or interpreted differently, or disregarded it. In terms of giving women equal right or more leadership roles within the movement, this has been, we can say, ignored, disregard. I don't know what is the blockage in there, it's hard to say, but you can see that people hold on to their thoughts. So you can see Gulen is very progressive in this matter, while the movement is very, very, very conservative. Almost as one of the maybe most conservative movements in Turkey. And the role of the woman is always in supportive position. And I think this not only shows that there is more than one opinion within the movement, and one of them is Gulen's opinion, and Gulen pushes that women should have equal rights within the Hizmet and within life and within society. But you can see there is a management issue that they didn't prioritize this, and you can see that when they want to prioritize something, they can prioritize it. For instance, about like helping the victims of the persecution in Turkey, that has always been prioritized. But somehow people who make decisions can ignore this very, very key, important historical moments, because for instance, we can see the persecution happens through Hizmet, through the women, through the new mothers. I believe there is a sense of push or trying to force movement to become a radical movement, a violent movement. So they are trying to provoke a violent response by imprisoning 17,000 plus women, and by imprisoning thousands of men, and leaving all the roles and responsibility to support their entire family onto the shoulders of women, and arresting that woman, and making this very publicly, arresting women who are just gave birth, and making this very publicly, try to probably push the buttons of the movement to radicalize them, which didn't happen, which I think should be emphasized, and it should be, like, pointed out a lot, because it's a very, very important show of resilience towards extremism in here. And I don't think there is any similar example that I can give throughout Islamic history, that any movement pushed this far but not responded with violence. But again, when you compare even within Turkish context, you can see that the movement Hizmet movement is failing to respond to this crisis in terms of men and women equality crisis, as for instance, Kurdish political movement did. For instance, Kurdish political movement has adopted a policy of having a male leadership and a female counterpart leadership as well, so they are both co-leaders of the party and this and that. So that over the time changed the entire political spectrum, bring loads of women into political arena. You can see Kurdish political movement demonstrations are very, very much attended by women, Kurdish women. They are have you can see they're influential in organizing and protesting every activity. This is unfortunately not in them. It's in there in terms of all activities almost go through the women, helping persecuted people, writing their stories, promoting activities about them, pushing the media, messages on the social media. They're all, you can see women are very active in there. But when it comes to leadership roles, there is a massive failing and despite the fact that Gulen emphasized that they should be 50-50, it didn't even change 1%. And I haven't perceived this. It didn't change. So I think this is an important point to make here. So I think in terms of what would happen is that I think the movement can miss an historic opportunity because there was cultural constraints to make all these moves, to give the woman equal right. It's very hard for a movement like Hizmet Movement, who grew up within the Turkish patriarchal context, to provide such a radical change in a very short space and time, advance women and man equality, and promote this by giving them equal share in terms of leadership roles, which will eventually sieve down to or influence down other roles, and which will bring a 50% of the movement's social capital into real power. So rather than dealing all these troubles and crises with one hand tied behind, meaning 50% of the population is not even there when the debate is going on, or it's a separate parallel debate that's happening and mostly disregard. And we can see that because you can see the lack of empathy in, like in terms of refugees, their troubles, children, and this and that. So you can see women are there as useful instruments, but not equal partners in decision making. So I think the movement is missing a very massive, a very big opportunity in here to embody this policy, radically change something. It's almost similar to when Gulen said in 2008, when everyone assumed that he is one of the most influential people in Turkish politics. He actually asked his followers to withdraw themselves from Turkey, at least 1 million of them, to go abroad and serve the humanity, to become a global movement, which wasn't interpreted as a strong call, because the debate was there. Everyone wanted to go abroad. They see that migration as an important tool to recreate identity, motivation, and everything. Just like Gulen moved from Turkey, they wanted to move as well. And eventually, they bring the question to him and say, "If you say, many people will take your lead." And he eventually said, "Yeah, go away. Go. 1 million people should leave the country." If that 1 million people left after 2008 in 1 year, as any traditional movement whose leader is very authoritarian and whatever he says goes, which is not the case for the Hizmet movement, is much more complicated than that. It's not a typical traditional movement. In fact, what happens is you can see that many people couldn't leave the country. Not even 100,000, not even 10,000, maybe not even 1,000, but some people decided that the most qualified people who are abroad, who know languages, who are engineers, who are achieving people, should come back to Turkey to help consolidating the progress of the country. So I think similarly there is a historical lack of synchronization between Gulen's vision and the movement that's supposed to follow him and his vision. And it is I think a very important eclipse at this time, or it's a very important time where, with lack of these cultural constraints, the massive need of women to join in the debate and discussion and bring the full potential of the movement into practice and lead an example for the rest of the Muslim world, and also show the real vision of equality for the rest of humanity, maybe, and create an example. It's just traditional theoretical stuff that goes on, and it's very disappointing for someone like me who observes the movement, reads about and follows the theoretical and practical debates within the movement, it is disappointing to see that the movement is actually missing this train, and they're not transforming themselves to a global movement that gives equal rights to women like they give to men. So I think it would have brought a lot of social policies into practice. The movement could have seen the immediate benefits of help towards the traumatized young children and families, and all these problems could have been easily addressed, where most male leaders ignore these issues or look at them as an instrumental propaganda issue rather than a social issue that needs to be addressed and stuff. And I think they're missing out the very important opportunity to express themselves in a very, very good way. It could have transformed the movement, which would have helped a healthy transformation for the rest of the Turkish and Islamic society. It would have created definitely an example. So I think the time is a testing time for the Hizmet movement. It is testing in terms of in one way, the Hizmet people are supposed to stay calm true to their ideals and beliefs of being peaceful, non-reactionary, open to dialogue, valuing education, helping each other. And on the other hand, it's also testing in a way that what really these people are made of, Hizmet people are made of. You know, in theory, in practice, in theory, Gulen's ideals are very promising, very, very progressive. But in practice, Hizmet movement seems to once again fail those ideals to be implemented. Just like in other issues, for instance, you know, the whole world is trying to see the difference between two Islamic, for their point of view, two Islamic movements, political Islamism, AK Party in Turkey, and let's say social Islamism or social Muslims, you know, however you call them, the Hizmet movement. For many of them, there isn't a difference because they are dominated by charismatic leaders. At least it looks like so. They are heavily influenced by Islam. They are one way or another trying to advance Islam. And women are nowhere to be seen in terms of equality. Erdogan makes very, very stupid remarks. But on the other hand, Gulen's remarks that could change a lot of stuff are disregarded by his people over a year without being implemented. And just remember every Women's Day as, yes, Women's Day. This many women are being arrested and stuff. Well, if they were, you know, like arrested, would they have been in the senior management roles? No, not really. So that's the problem. So I think it is showing in terms of it's showing. It's an opportunity to show the difference of this specific Islamic interpretation is different and valuable. It tolerates the criticism. It has multiple pockets, and it has a lot of debate and discussion ongoing within its ranks, and it also values women. At least it is leader, the Hizmet movement's leader values women and wants them to prosper, and calls for that since 1995. But I think there is a problem in somewhere that his calls are not considered by his followers, by his supporters in the grassroots as proper instructions to follow, which would show that it's just like another traditional movement, takes on board whatever their leader says. So there is a good side of this, that unlike it is being propagated that the Gulen doesn't have the total control of the movement. It's an inspirational role that he tries to promote some values. Some he becomes successful, in some he fails. He can't communicate, or he can't convince his followers to follow his principles in certain issues. But on the other hand, it's a really a missing opportunity. Well, if you think similar or different, please share your opinion on YouTube page of, like just in the comment section, and let's continue this conversation from there. Thank you very much for joining in this week's Hizmet Talks. We talked about the women and Hizmet movement, and I was trying to show that why Gulen's messages last year was not implemented by the Hizmet movement, whether it is because of the crisis, or there is still the remnants of patriarchal culture, or there is a management problem, or it's just because it's not a traditional Islamic movement that leaders say something and the movement implements that. But the bottom line is that the whole world is watching, and it is a time. Every crisis is an opportunity. It's a time for transformation, and I wish we will see that transformation by next Women's Day. Thank you very much for watching, and please do not forget to support. Because of your support, I am able to do these programs. I'll just share the Patreon link. So thank you very much, and join the debate in the comment section below, so I know what you think about this issue. Thank you very much again.